Season 1 of Loki was a mind-bending trip to the outer reaches of the MCU. As always, Marvel packed in plenty of Easter eggs, from obscure 90s product placement to a ton of fun references to Marvel comics and other movies. Here are some small details you may have missed. While the Marvel Studios animated logo rolls at the beginning of Episode 6, we hear Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter's song "It's Been a Long, Long Time" play. As the tune begins, several famous lines uttered throughout the MCU can be heard. It's a mixed bag of more than a dozen catchphrases, punchlines, and tender moments. We hear Steve Rogers talking to himself in Endgame, which is fitting for a Loki episode.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Most of the lines we hear are from major MCU characters, like the Hulk addressing Loki after he tosses him around like a ragdoll.
Puny god.
But we also hear everyone's favorite Kiwi-accented rock monster, Korg.
Hey man, we're about to jump on that ginormous spaceship. You wanna come?
And we get one line from a Disney Plus MCU TV show, and of course, it's the one the internet just couldn't get enough of.
But what is grief? If not love, persevering.
There's some indistinct overlapping chatter at the end of this opening sound collage, but a few other familiar voices can be heard throughout the introduction as well. As we view the timeline's physical expression, voiceovers can be heard from several real-life heroes. The first comes from Neil Armstrong, saying "One small step for man," followed by climate activist Greta Thunberg shouting "How dare they?" Activist Malala Yousafzai can be heard saying "My dream," followed by Nelson Mandela saying "We have fought for the right to experience peace." These real-world quotes are wrapped up with the poet Maya Angelou saying "I will rise." In addition to serving as a sweet look back at the MCU's past, this introduction also offers a nod to the franchise's rapidly approaching multiverse. After all, as the MCU begins to embrace the concept of countless realities, who's to say we aren't part of the whole phenomenon? Slipping a meta brainbender into the opening credits, that's so Loki. There's a lot to unpack in the first 2 minutes of Episode 6. After "It's Been a Long, Long Time" fades out, Tchaikovsky's main score from Swan Lake fades in. The famous ballet centers around Odette and Odile, two versions of the same character. Odette is a cursed queen who is forced to live her life as a swan during the day and a human at night. Odile is the opposite in all respects, a bewitching presence who disguises herself as Odette in order to trick Prince Siegfried into falling for her. In the ballet, the two parts are often played by the same dancer. Loki and Sylvie's story is much like that of Swan Lake, as it's essentially two versions of the same character battling one another. While the ballet ends on a rather happy note, with Odette and Prince Siegfried coming together and living happily ever after, we don't go into Episode 6 expecting happy endings for Loki or Sylvie anytime soon. In Episode 5, all signs seem to be pointing to the impending appearance of Kang the Conqueror in the finale. Episode 6 confirms those suspicions as Kang appears in the flesh in the Citadel at the end of time. Jonathan Majors was confirmed to play Kang in the upcoming Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania in 2020, so while his name is never uttered in Loki Episode 6, hardcore MCU fans knew who he was as soon as he appeared on screen. Miss Minutes, meanwhile, introduces him as He Who Remains, the TVA string puller our heroes have been questing for, and a familiar name in the comics. Kang's history in the comics is long and rather confusing, creating countless possibilities for the MCU. First appearing in 1964's The Avengers #8, Kang is born Nathaniel Richards and lived on Earth 6311, an alternate version of the main Marvel Comics reality Earth 616. After discovering time travel, he journeys to ancient Egypt and becomes Pharaoh Rama-Tut, but is met with resistance by a time-traveling Fantastic Four, setting up a long and incredibly convoluted chain of events that's seen him battle and ally with numerous Marvel characters during the ensuing decades. Kang also has significant ties to Ravonna in the comics, and with her on the loose as the Loki finale closes, it's hard not to assume she'll meet up with one of the many versions of Kang who seem likely to appear as the MCU's Phase 4 moves forward. The penultimate episode of Loki on Disney Plus was a wild, variant-filled ride that set up what is sure to be a mind-blowing finale. It was also jam-packed with fun Easter eggs for fans to find. Here are a few you may have missed in Episode 5, Journey into Mystery. At the beginning of Episode 5, we travel through a destroyed cityscape full of decrepit buildings. Most of these structures seem like filler to emphasize the destruction, but there's one significant Easter egg hidden within the rubble that's worth noting. Toward the end of the camera pan, a building on the right reads Qeng, Q-E-N-G, at the top of it. Marvel Comics fans should know this famous name as it's related to a major villain who's set to appear in the MCU. This tower represents Kang Enterprises, and if you thought it looked like the Avengers Tower, you weren't wrong. In the comics, it's revealed that Stark Industries sold the building to the company in Avengers Volume 6, Number 0 from 2015. The CEO of Kang Industries is Mr. Griffin, aka Nathaniel Richards, who exists on Earth 6311, an alternate version of Earth 616, the reality where all the main Marvel stuff goes down. Nathaniel Richards is also known as Kang the Conqueror, as the latter was split into two different versions of himself due to a time stream error. It's a complicated story from 2015's all-new, all-different Avengers number 1, but this nod to Kang, a major villain we know will appear in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, is something that we can't ignore. During Episode 5, one of the first things we see in the Void is a menacing purple-black cloud with a monstrous face within it.
This is the Void, that's Alioth, and we're his lunch. Come on!
Known as a trans-temporal entity, Alioth doesn't exist in any reality, but instead what the comics describe as temporal limbo. The being is the biggest enemy of Kang the Conqueror, and its empire is bigger than his foes. Alioth first appeared in 1993's Avengers the Terminatrix Objective number 1, and is known for its absorption powers, which we saw play a huge role in Episode 5. Alioth is drawn to living beings more than anything, and has the power to disintegrate them as soon as it encompasses them. In the MCU, it appears as if Alioth lives within the Void at the end of time, unlike its location in the comics. It's also being used to protect the person or entity behind the Timekeepers, who many now suspect to be Kang. If this is the case in the MCU, the two would be on the same side, a massive shift from their comic book origins. In a move we never thought would happen, the Thanos-copter became canon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe thanks to Loki Episode 5. When the Mad Titan finally perished in Avengers Endgame, it looked like we might never see the famous aircraft, but now we know why we never did. The Thanos-copter first appeared in 1979's Spidey Super Stories number 39, and was a helicopter the villain used one time to attack Hellcat, a popular Marvel hero who fought the Titan as he tried to obtain the Cosmic Cube. Thanos also picked up Deadpool in the helicopter in Deadpool Volume 5, Number 45, when the latter was hired to help the Mad Titan steal the cube. It's such a shame we never got to see that scene play out on the big screen. Fortunately, Loki Episode 5 paid homage to a great and frequently mocked comic book moment. The Thanos-copter matched its comic book appearance exactly, with its bright yellow paint and the Titan's name written across it in large, bold letters. We knew we'd be getting a version of the trickster god from the classic Vote Loki comic after he appeared in several trailers for the series, and he finally arrived in Episode 5, but only for a brief scene where a scuffle breaks out between a gaggle of Lokis. As for the Variance origin story, the 4-part comic series debuted in June 2016 and was a satire on the United States presidential election of the same year. In the 4th and final issue, Loki concedes the race. In the comics, Loki's campaign is based on his honesty about how he's going to lie to the American public. The citizens eat it up, except for a reporter from the Daily Bugle who's trying her best to take him down. It's definitely one of the weirdest Loki stories of all time, complete with political action cults sacrificing goats. And we're incredibly glad this dapper and politically ambitious Loki got to show up on the screen, even if it was only for a few minutes. Just before the Loki group makes their way down to their secret hideout, we see different layers of rubble above their little base. And buried in all this debris, we get a glimpse of Mjolnir and a small glass jar with T365 written on it. Trapped inside this jar is a tiny version of Thor, and one who's a bit more amphibious than we're used to seeing the God of Thunder. Known as Throg, this powerful frog version of Thor first appeared in Thor number 363, although number 365 is more significant for the character because it's where he lifted Mjolnir and became the Thunder Frog officially. This coincides with Mjolnir being just out of Throg's reach in the episode as he's trapped in the glass jar. Thor number 365 also heavily features Loki, who suspects something is afoot with his brother. It's a hilarious storyline which includes Thor helping an army of frogs battle an army of rats. Just as with D.B. Cooper in Episode 1, Episode 5 of Loki further explained some great American mysteries. The first to appear in Journey into Mystery was Polybius, an arcade game long considered an urban legend. The legend of Polybius suggests this fictitious 80s game was real and run by the government as a psychological experiment. It was supposedly created to test mind control on users, but the arcade game was never found. It looks like it was swooped up by the TVA and sent to the place where urban legends go to die. In the middle of episode 5, we also see the USS Eldridge fall out of the sky and into the void. Unlike Polybius, the famous naval ship was an actual thing. In 1943, it was alleged that the ship was made invisible as part of the famous Philadelphia experiment. As some claim, it was also apparently teleported from Philadelphia to Virginia and back again. Crew members who were on board reportedly went insane, and the story was so bizarre it was adapted into a time travel movie, The Philadelphia Experiment, in 1984. Since episode 5 mostly took place in the void, set designers had a major opportunity to include an incredible amount of Easter eggs from the MCU's past. Some of these include Ant-Man villain Yellow Jacket's helmet in the first act, which we saw as we panned over the landscape. And Ronan's Dark Aster spaceship also makes a brief appearance. We also get a brief look at a demolished helicarrier sitting in the wasteland. Also, in the vast devastation across Loki episode 5 is what appears to be a stone face of the Living Tribunal, which we know isn't an MCU relic yet. One of the most important entities in Marvel Comics is the character who first appeared in Strange Tales number 157 from 1967. The Living Tribunal basically oversees everything ever in every reality. Serving as somewhat of a judge of the entire cosmic universe and all of its realities, the Tribunal is more powerful than all of the Infinity Stones combined. Episode 4 of Loki was the most revealing and game-changing installment yet. The episode also had some treats in store for Marvel Comics fans and MCU diehards. Here are a few Easter eggs you may have missed in Loki Episode 4. One of the biggest surprises to come in Episode 4 is the return of Jamie Alexander as Lady Sif. We haven't seen the character in the MCU since 2013's Thor: The Dark World, and while we suspected the missing hero might be returning, her appearance was still shocking nonetheless. Sif's cameo was brief, and those unfamiliar with Norse mythology might have missed a famous story hiding in plain sight. When she first encounters Loki, Sif is holding a lock of her dark hair. She charges at Loki, beyond aggravated that he cut off her tresses, and calls him pathetic and conniving in addition to other unpleasant words. She aggressively knees and punches him, and Loki has to relive the event over and over as he's stuck in a time loop. While it might seem like a storyline the Loki writers conjured up, they actually pulled it directly from the two characters' mythologies. In the Norse myths, unlike the MCU, Sif is known for her long golden hair. In the myths, Loki cuts off Sif's hair, which puts Thor, her husband, in a fit of rage. After his brother charges him with replacing her hair, Loki travels to Nidavellir, where Stormbreaker was forged in Infinity War, so the dwarves can create new hair for Sif out of gold, which would grow once placed on her head. We finally get a look at the Timekeepers in Episode 4 after their appearances were teased with TVA sculptures throughout earlier episodes of the series. When Loki and Sylvie are brought before them to be pruned, the Timekeepers give them a chance to speak. We don't get much out of these mysterious beings, although their disdain for the Loki variants is obvious. With the help of Hunter B-15, who's had her memories of her pre-TVA life restored by Sylvie, the Lokis are able to battle and defeat their captors, and Sylvie severs the head of a Timekeeper, only to discover that they're just androids. Beyond disappointed, Loki and Sylvie are left wondering who created the TVA. Marvel Comics might have some answers. The Timekeepers first appeared in 1979's Thor number 282 and were created by He Who Remains, someone unmentioned during Episode 4. Also known as Him Who Remains, or more simply Him, this mystery being was the last director of the TVA who put the Timekeepers in place to oversee the organization. Originally, Him created the Time Twisters in 1976's Thor number 243, another trio of beings who strayed from their directive and began destroying Earth every 3,000 years. In Loki, the time-looping devices used by the TVA are known as Time Twisters in an apparent nod to these characters.
Sorry, the Time Twister just loops you, not the furniture.
While we don't know who specifically created the TVA in the world of Loki, He Who Remains or the Time Twisters might have some insight. Different versions of Loki are teased in Episode 2 during a briefing Mobius gives to a group of Minutemen and other TVA workers before they take off to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. These variants are displayed on a hologram, which depicts 5 different versions of the character. None of these guys, however, match the 4 new Lokis we meet in the Episode 4 mid-credit scene. Thanks to the credits, we know these variants are Boastful Loki, Classic Loki, and Kid Loki. Oh yeah, there's also a Crocodile Loki. Classic Loki sports the traditional garb the character wore when he first appeared in 1962's Journey into Mystery number 85. Kid Loki has a much shorter history in the comics, first appearing in 2010's Thor number 617. This incarnation came about after the original Loki died, but he was reborn as a child who eventually joins the Young Avengers. The backgrounds on our other 2 variants are vague, but Boastful Loki's possession of a hammer could be a nod to 2020's Thor number 4. In this comic, Thor's brother is able to lift Mjolnir while on Jotunheim. Loki was also able to lift Mjolnir during Marvel's Axis event when his moral alignment was reversed, which made him the god of heroism. Comic precedents aside, Boastful Loki's appearance at least hints at some sort of confirmation that a Loki variant is worthy. As far as the crocodile goes, there seems to be no history of this character in the comics. We've seen a frog version of Thor before, aka Throg the Frog of Thunder, in 2009's Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers number 1, and Loki turns Thor into a frog in Thor number 363, so hey, why not a crocodile Loki? After Loki gets pruned, he winds up in New York City, where he meets his new variant buddies. Most of the focus in this scene is on the new Lokis, and while your eyes are drawn to a crocodile wearing gold horns, there's something major you might have missed in the background. Avengers Tower, previously known as Stark Tower, is looming in the distance, absolutely destroyed. We've seen the building take a beating before, but nothing like this. The new Lokis appear to be hiding out in another apocalyptic event, although this time it seems to have already happened, as opposed to previous episodes when the events were imminent. Avengers Tower is decimated in this timeline, with its top floor balconies obliterated as it rests on a tilt. It looks like the barn door protocol wasn't installed on this former superhero hangout, like it was for Avengers HQ in Endgame. Marvel Studios' Loki has introduced a whole new variant on everyone's favorite god of mischief. With the mysterious Sylvie running around the timeline with Loki in tow, the MCU is getting weirder than it's ever been before. Here are the Easter eggs you missed in Loki Episode 3. Much of Loki Episode 3 is spent on Lamentis 1, a rocky, purple-skied moon facing imminent destruction. The episode is even named after Lamentis, which has briefly appeared in Marvel Comics. Debuting in 2007's Annihilation Conquest Prologue number 1, it lies on the outskirts of Kree space. That appearance is basically just a mention, which means that for all intents and purposes, Lamentis 1 is basically a blank slate for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a perfect spot for Loki to continue delving into its narrative mysteries, in other words. Loki and Sylvie arrive on Lamentis 1 after escaping from Ravonna and her Minutemen following a skirmish outside the elevator doors leading to the Timekeepers. They land on the moon in 2077, 12 hours before it's set to collide with its planet, an inconvenient apocalypse for them to hide in, but with their tempad low on juice, this odd couple of Lokis is forced to make the best of a bad situation.
Not the only tech-savvy Loki.
Don't ever call me that.
Tech-savvy?
No, a Loki.
After Sylvie and Loki sneak on board the shuttle ferrying ticket holders off Lamentis 1, they have time to start getting to know one another, so naturally, talk turns to their love lives. Sylvie remains as cagey as ever, but tells Loki she's managed to keep a long-distance relationship going with a postman as she runs from one apocalypse to another.
Managed to maintain quite a serious long-distance relationship with a postman whilst running across time from one apocalypse to another.
At first, this sounds like a joke, as if she could maintain any kind of relationship given her current life path. But as it turns out, there's more than one postman of note in Marvel Comics that fans may know about. First appearing in 2002's Morlocks number 1, Postman, aka David, is a mutant who lost control of his powers and accidentally wiped his wife's mind. He seeks refuge with the Morlocks based in Chicago and eventually becomes their leader. Postman ends up losing his mutant abilities thanks to the Scarlet Witch, whose No More Mutants decree in 2005's House of M number 7 wipes the mutant gene from the vast majority of its carriers. Of course, Sylvie and Postman don't appear to have a clear connection in the comics, so we'd say put a pin in this one. It's not necessarily a hint that the Postman character is coming, but across the movies and TV shows of Phase 4, the MCU is clearly setting up something, and it'll be hard to know what were real hints and what were just coincidences until the series lays all its cards on the table. Multiverse? Mutants? Who knows? Another famous Postman is Willie Lumpkin, the friendly mailman most known for his appearances in the Fantastic Four comic books, and also for dating May Parker in The Amazing Spider-Man. So who knows, maybe Sylvie had a thing for him. There may look like there's a bit of an age gap, but these are Lokis we're talking about. Looks can be deceiving. Or maybe Sylvie really is just pining for a hunky delivery man she's never been able to settle down with. It wouldn't be the first time an Asgardian super being has fallen for a regular Joe or Jane. We're treated to some fun callbacks to earlier MCU chapters in Loki, and Episode 3 is no exception. Once Loki and Sylvie work their way onto the Lamentis shuttle, they sit and converse in one of its upper-scale lounges. As they talk, Loki helps himself to 2 glasses of champagne, and Sylvie ends up falling asleep. When she wakes, her new travel companion has treated himself to more beverages, and he's putting on a show for the other travelers in the lounge. After singing and giving cheers to Sylvie, Loki smashes a martini glass and yells, "Another!" Loyal MCU fans will notice this nod to the first Thor film. The line and gesture are uttered by Thor when he visits a diner with his new Earth pals Jane Foster, Eric Selvig, and Darcy Lewis.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
The line is one of the most quoted from the original Thor movie, which feels so long ago at this point. All of these characters have been through so much at this point. It's nice that the MCU can still slow down and show that it remembers where it came from. Disney's Loki is off to a fantastic start, with the first 2 episodes positively packed with fun details and homages for Marvel Comics fans to find. Here are some Easter eggs in Episode 2 you may have missed. At the beginning of Episode 2, several Minutemen travel to Oshkosh, Wisconsin in 1985. They arrive at a Renaissance fair where they believe the Loki variant is hiding out. At first, it might appear like Oshkosh is a totally random place for the writers and producers of Loki to select for a scene like this, but there's actually a sweet story behind it. Mark Grunwald was a prolific Marvel Comics writer, editor, penciler, and celebrated Marvel continuity expert, which is why the appearance of the comic book version of Mobius is based on Grunwald, and why Owen Wilson gets to sport a mustache in the show. Mobius's appearance isn't the only homage Loki pays to the late comic book legend, as it turns out he was also born in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, according to his New York Times obituary. Grunwald died at age 43 following a heart attack in 1996. There are hundreds of floors that make up the TVA, which is full of winding hallways and curvy architectural designs. Loki and Mobius take several elevator rides throughout the first few episodes, traveling to all different kinds of TVA departments. In Episode 2, they land on level 372, where Mobius instructs Loki to read through all of the variants paperwork to see if he can come up with any theories or suggestions. Why 372? The Time Variance Authority made its first appearance in Thor Volume 1, issue number 372. The use of 372 as one of the floor numbers in Loki is a nice nod to the organization's origins and suggests viewers should probably take a second look at all numbers that pop up in the series. Loki can only access his own file at the TVA, so we get to witness Loki read about the events of Ragnarok, which he hasn't lived through at this point in time. While he's looking through the documents, we see some new tidbits of information about the event that we witnessed in Thor Ragnarok. The paperwork shows that there were 9,719 casualties in what's described as a Class 7 apocalypse. Mobius confirms that Ragnarok wiped out most of Asgard's people, and we know from Avengers Endgame that the survivors are currently living on Earth in New Asgard. A more light-hearted Easter egg hidden in the Ragnarok paperwork is the mention of the Revengers. The makeshift superhero group is assembled by Thor and includes Valkyrie, the Hulk, and Loki. The foursome bond together to escape Sakaar and are instrumental in the takedown of Hela. Thor jokes about their group name in the film, but the group helped save hundreds of Asgardians from death, justifying their mention on the document. In Episode 2, Loki, Mobius, and a team of Minutemen travel to Alabama in 2050. They're there to sniff out the missing variant who Loki suspects is hiding in apocalyptic events. The group arrives in a Roxxon parking lot, and the store name is too reminiscent of a famous Marvel Comics corporation to be ignored. The Roxxon Corporation, which has gone by many names, is an oil conglomerate that was first mentioned in 1974's Captain America number 180. Clearly, this is the same company now. Roxxon has worked with both S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, but their alliance will always lie with whoever can fill their pockets the most. Blinded by dollar signs, Roxxon deals in heavily illicit activities, sometimes with the universe's biggest villains. In Thor number 6 Volume 4, Roxxon worked closely with Malekith to receive exclusive rights to mine any other planets he overtook. In the MCU, the corporation was mentioned by the Mandarin in Iron Man 3.
Thomas here is an accountant for the Roxxon Oil Corporation.
And the brand has been featured in other Marvel live-action TV projects, including Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's been a long-standing rumor that Lady Loki would make an appearance in Loki, so when a female antagonist popped up toward the end of episode 2, a casual fan and rumor follower might just assume that we've got ourselves a Lady Loki. Well, not so fast, my friend. In the English credits at the end of the episode, actress Sofia Di Martino is listed as playing the Variant. However, if you look at the Spanish credits, Elisa Buter is credited as playing Sylvie. That name might ring a bell to longtime Marvel fans. It seems like this Variant is actually Enchantress, a character who first battled Thor back in 1964 in Journey into Mystery issue 103. Enchantress's real name is indeed Sylvie. Now, we've seen the MCU get cute before with cameos and such, looking at you, WandaVision, so we can't guarantee you that this is Enchantress. Lady Loki still might pop up eventually in the series, or this is another of those silly MCU twists. Enchantress is the new Lady Loki. After the Variant sets off multiple reset charges at Roxxon in 2050, the sacred timeline is thrust into chaos. As Judge Renslayer watches the pandemonium in her office, her computer screen displays several locations that appear to be affected by all of the meddling. While some of these locations we've seen on more than one occasion in the MCU, like Asgard and Vormir, the others we only visited once. Hala is the Kree home planet and the one that Carol Danvers trained on for many years, and it appeared in Captain Marvel. Xandar made its appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy, but we know the planet was decimated by Thanos just before the events of Avengers Infinity War. In Thor Ragnarok, we visited the trash planet of Sakaar, which the Grandmaster oversees, while Titan is the home planet of Thanos that saw an epic battle between the villain and part of the Avengers in Infinity War. Ego is, of course, the living planet and the setting for about half of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Loki is the third Marvel series to land on Disney+, and the premiere is just as strange, if not more, than the frequently mind-bending WandaVision. And like WandaVision, there are some fun Easter eggs tucked away for Marvel fans to find. When episode 1 of Loki kicks off, a brief recap of the events leading up to the series plays out. After Loki is captured at the finale of the Avengers, we see him escorted by the superhero team to the bottom floor of Avengers Tower. As we saw in Avengers Endgame, a disgruntled Hulk causes a future Tony Stark to drop a briefcase containing the Tesseract, which then bounces in front of Loki's feet. The trickster grabs the cube and vanishes, disrupting the entire time heist. We find out that this portal's other end was in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, where Loki drops out of the sky. His head sticks out of the sand as he lays on his back, the desert's landscape partly covering his green and gold garb. While it's a brief moment in the episode's intro, it's also a major callback to the MCU property that started it all, Iron Man. When Tony escapes from his captors in that film, he flies off into the sky, but he comes crashing down into the desert sand after his homebrewed suit malfunctions, breaking apart into hundreds of pieces and leaving him dazed on the ground. The shot with Loki is a nice nod to the first Iron Man and a pleasant parallel that depicts the aftermath of two men who have just escaped capture. After Loki is captured by the TVA, he's taken to their headquarters. He signs some paperwork, walks through a temporal aura detector, and then takes a number as he waits to see a judge for his crimes against the timeline. While waiting, he's treated to an educational video produced by the TVA to explain to variants why they've been captured. Hosted by TVA mascot Miss Minutes, the video goes into detail about the creation of the TVA and how the Timekeepers monitor the time stream. Miss Minutes then explains that when variants veer off their predetermined course,
stepping off your path created a Nexus event, which left unchecked could branch off into madness, leading to another multiversal war.
This isn't the first time we've heard the word Nexus in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the last time wasn't long before Loki. One of the 6 WandaVision commercials seen during the series Show Within a Show is an advertisement for Nexus antidepressants.
Nexus. Because the world doesn't revolve around you. Or does it?
Nexus will be a significant word and concept moving forward in the MCU, as evidenced by the title of the Doctor Strange sequel, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which is being written by Loki head writer Michael Waldron. In WandaVision, the Nexus drug was being advertised as a medicine for Wanda Maximoff's grief and anger, and also a reference to her role as a Nexus being. Loki is poised to further explore what the term means in the MCU. When Loki is apprehended in the Gobi Desert, several TVA officers arrive through a portal to capture him. While it's not specifically stated who they are or what their title is, these guards seem to be a nod to Marvel Comics' Minutemen based on their purpose and uniforms. First appearing in Fantastic Four number 352, the Minutemen are charged with policing the time stream. As these TVA guards serve the same sort of purpose, their appearance is a nice Easter egg. In the Marvel Comics, the Minutemen are actually robots, not human beings, as they appear to be in Loki. However, it should be noted that at the beginning of Episode 1, a TVA worker asks Loki to clarify that he is not a fully robotic being.
Do a lot of people not know if they're robots?
It's probably nothing more than a throwaway gag, but Marvel is nothing if not tricky. Who knows, the guards or Minutemen could actually be artificial. Sure, Owen Wilson's Agent Mobius is a bit of a time cop, but that's not why he's sporting that mustache. In the comics, Agent Mobius's look was based on the late Mark Grunwald, a prolific Marvel Comics writer and editor known for being Marvel's resident continuity expert until his untimely death at age 43 from a heart attack. So it makes sense that the live-action Mobius would keep the stache from the comics and bring this sweet homage to a Marvel legend into the MCU. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about Loki are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.